Hi, I'm Susan and today I'd like to share with you how to crochet this beautiful little baby blanket. I've used a yarn by STYLECRAFT. It's a 3-weight double knit yarn and it's STYLECRAFT Special DK. I've chosen the shade Candy Floss, but you can use any yarn you prefer. It looks lovely in a 4 or a 5 weight, but if you do decide to use the 3-weight, you'll need a 4mm hook. You'll also need a little pair of scissors and a yarn needle for weaving in those ends. Now this little baby blanket, it measures about 32 inches by 37, which is 82 centimeters by 94. It's worked in multiples of 10 plus 2, so each little block is worked over 5 stitches. The row repeat is 6, but that's not a problem because they're very similar, the rows. So working through from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. This is the row repeat and they're offset. So that's where you get the similarity. You end on a row 10 and you start with a single crochet row. So in total, for the length of the blanket, you'd need 75 rows. Now, the starting chains you'd need for the blanket are 122, but today we'll just be starting with 32 because we're making a sample. The little border I've chosen to use is a simple single crochet border, and I've worked some tie edges, which I'll show you later in the video. I love the reverse too. I don't know what you think. You'll have to let me know in the comments. But I think the reverse is ever so pretty. You've got these little ridges, which is because you've worked some post stitches. And I think it's really hard to decide. Well, it is for me to decide which I prefer. It's a lovely soft blanket. It's something different. It reminds me a little bit of the basket weave stitch. And other than that, I've not a lot to say about it, just that I will demonstrate these stitches slowly for those of you who are beginners, and you can rewind and pause as you need to, and don't forget that little cogwheel that you can hit and adjust the speed of the video should you really need to. Okay, having said all that, let's get started with the tutorial. So go ahead, crochet your 32 chains, or if you're doing the blanket, 122, and I'll see you in a sec. I'll be using a 6mm hook with a 5-weight yarn today, just so it looks a little clearer for you to see. Start with a slip knot on your hook and go ahead and chain 32 for the sample, or 122 if you're doing the blanket, and I'll meet you in a few secs. Next, ignore the loop on your hook, skip that first chain and work a single crochet under the top loop of the next chain. And then work a single crochet under the top loop of each chain to the end of your length of chains. So go ahead and I'll meet you in a few secs once you've done that. You'll end up with a total of 31 single crochets for the sample, but if you're doing the blanket, you should have a total of 121 single crochets. So at the end of your first row, you're going to chain 2 and turn. We're now working row 2. Ignore that first stitch. Your chain 2 count as your first double crochet. In the next stitch, work a double crochet. And double crochet in the next stitch. Then yarn over, skip the next 2 stitches, In the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. And again, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through those first 4 loops, then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. There you've created your first puff stitch. Now we're going to do another puff stitch in the same stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up another loop. Yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 stitches. Chain 2 and work another 2 puff stitches in the same stitch. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up another loop, yarn over, pull through 4 loops, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2 loops and repeat another puff stitch. Don't forget you can pause and rewind the video as you need to. And now you've completed your first puff shell. I've made one too many puff stitches, I got carried away there. Right, let's have a little look. Okay, so we have our 2 chains which count as our first double crochet, a double crochet, skip 2 and then our puff shell stitch in the next stitch. Next we're just going to yarn over and skip 1, 2 stitches and we're going to do a double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So 1 double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches after you've skipped 2. Next, yarn over, skip 2 and work another puff shell. So work your puff stitch, another puff stitch for the right side of the shell, chain 2 and then another 2 puff stitches in the same stitch for the left side of the shell. Next, yarn over and skip 2 and then in that next stitch along work a double crochet, working a double crochet in each of those next 4 stitches. So you'll have a total of 5 double crochets in all between your puff shells. Then yarn over. I suggest you yarn over first because then if you count and point with your hook, you're there ready to work your stitch. So skip 1, skip 2 and into the next stitch we're ready to work our puff shell stitch. So one puff stitch, another puff stitch, chain 2, and another puff stitch. Another 2 puff stitches, I should say, for the left side of your shell. And once again, yarn over, skip 1, 2, and then work a double crochet into each of the last 3 stitches. And that completes round 2. Look for that little bar and then you'll find your last stitch there. So if we have a little look, this is how it's looking. Next, we're going to start with row 3. Chain 2, turn your work, and now we're going to work a front post double crochet. Yarn over, bring your hook to the right of the post of this next double crochet here, pass it behind the post and through to the front, so the post lies in front of your work. Then yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Once again, for a front post double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook in the gap to the right of this post, pass your hook behind the post and through to the front. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, just as you do for a regular double crochet. The only difference is you've worked the double crochet around the post of the stitch rather than through the top. Next, we're going to work our puff shell in the next 2 chain space. So you skip over these next 2 stitches and just aim for that 2 chain space. Just as we did on the row before, yarn over, pull through, insert, etc. And then we work our puff shell exactly the same way. Chain 2, and then work 2 puff stitches to complete the left side of your shell. Next, yarn over and around the next 5 double crochets, work front post double crochets. So yarn over, bring your hook to the right hand side of that post, work behind it and back out to the front from the left, and then work your double crochet as normal. Remember what I said about you can slow the video down should you need to, or pause and rewind as many times as you might need to grasp how to do this if you're not familiar with the post stitches. Next, we're just going to go straight into that puff shell space and work another puff shell. working the left side next. Once again, yarn over, and we're going to work 5 front post double crochets around each of the next 5 double crochets. There we go. Now we're ready to do our puff shell, so we need 2 puff stitches in that next 2 chain space. Two chains, and then another 2 puff stitches. And then we finish with a front post double crochet around the next 2 double crochets, and just a regular double crochet in the second of our turning chains. So by turning the way we do, your chain should be facing you. So that's your first chain. Pop your hook in there and complete a double crochet. And there you've completed row 3. Now on row 4, we're going to be working some back post double crochets. So just as we did before, I'll take those back post double crochets a little slower, and we'll start that in a sec. So just get some yarn out. There we go. So chain 2, 1, 2. So this is starting row 4. So here we have our 2 chains representing our first double crochet for row 4, and by turning this way they'll be facing us, those little chains, on the other side. Right, now for a back post double crochet, you just find the post of the stitch you need to work around, which is here, and it's really exactly the same, except you're going to work from the back to the front. So yarn over, bring your hook, make sure you still catch that yarn there, from the back into the front to the left of that post, and then pass your hook over the post and out to the back again, and then yarn over, pull that yarn through, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So once again, yarn over, make sure you've caught that yarn there, and then bring your hook from the back to the front to the right of this post, here, through this little gap, over the post. So now that little post is lying at the back of your hook. Then grab the yarn, or yarn over and pull it through under that post, and then yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And then you work your puff shell, so you work into the next little 2 chain space with a puff stitch, another puff stitch, 2 chains, another puff stitch, and another puff stitch. For those of you who live in the UK, or you may watch Countdown, I've just reminded me of Countdown where they say and another consonant. Anyway, that's getting us a bit sidetracked now. So as you can see, there you go. You've been working these front and back post stitches and you're starting to get this lovely textured effect. Now we're going to work 5 back posts double crochets around these next 5 stitches. So you skip over 2 and find these next posts, yarn over once again, bring your hook from the back of your work just to the right through that gap, over the post and out to the back again, and then yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 to finish off just as a normal double crochet. Okay, yarn over, I think you get the idea now, and you can rewind as I've said before and pause as needed. Okay, right, so you repeat this sequence to the end. So you're ready now to work another puff shell and then your 5 back post double crochets, a puff shell, and then I'll meet you just here. So I've made the last puff shell, so you're going to skip over those 2 puff stitches and work a back post double crochet around the next 2 stitches, like so, and then you do a regular double crochet in the second of those turning chains. 1, 2. And that completes row 4. So this is the reverse of your work, and for row 5 we start with the first row of our repeat. So if we have a little look here, this is the right side. So at the end of row 5, chain 2 and turn. You'll have the right side of your work facing now, and what we're going to do is we're going to offset these little puff shells. So the middle front post double crochet here is where we're going to do our next shell, here and here. Depending on the size of your blanket, you'll have a different number of shells. Okay, so to start row 5, you've done your chain 2 and turned, and then just work a regular double crochet in the second stitch. A regular double crochet in the next stitch. And now we're going to work a double crochet over the shell. So in the first puff stitch, work a double crochet In the next puff stitch, a double crochet in the 2 chain space, a double crochet, and again in the next puff stitch a double crochet, and in the next puff stitch a double crochet. Next we're going to skip 2 and work our puff shell just as we've done in previous rows. So skip and skip again, and into that middle stitch work a puff stitch, another puff stitch, two chains, and 2 more puff stitches for your puff shell. And then once again skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and work a double crochet over each of the next 2 stitches, a double crochet in the 2 chain space, and then a double crochet over the next 2 puff stitches. So 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. 1 double crochet, I should say, in each of the next 2 stitches. So over each puff shell you have a total of 5 double crochets. Now we're ready to work our puff shell again. Skip 1, 2. In that third one, work your puff shell. And for the left side of the puff shell, as usual, your 2 puff stitches. So in that stitch you've done 2 puff stitches, 2 chains, and 2 puff stitches for your puff shell. Next, skip 2 and repeat a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, double crochet in the 2 chain space, and a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches over that puff shell. And now we're going to work a regular double crochet over the next stitch, regular double crochet over the next stitch, and a double crochet into the second of those 2 turning chains, which counted as a double crochet, to finish round 5. And this is how it's looking. For round 6, once again just chain 2 and turn your work. Now once again you're just going to work 2 double crochets over the next 2 stitches, so 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, remembering your first 2 chain count as your first double crochet. And this is the reverse of your work. You can tell that because of these little ridges here. Now over these next 5 stitches we're going to work 5 back post double crochets. So you now know if it's the reverse of your work you're doing back post, if it's the front of your work you do front posts. for this particular pattern. Now we're ready to do our shell puff, so skip over 2 into the 2 chain space with your front post, your puff stitch, another puff stitch, two chains, and then another puff stitch. Well, I should say another 2 puff stitches. There you go. So next we're going to work a back post double crochet around each of the next 5 stitches. One, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then your next puff shell, so a puff stitch, another puff stitch, 2 chains, and another 2 puff stitches, all in that same 2 chain space in the row below. And then we are going to work back post double crochets over the next 5 stitches, or I should say around the posts of the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you just work a regular double crochet over the next 2 stitches, and then a double crochet into the second of those 2 turning chains. And that completes row 6. So this is the reverse. Next, for row 7, chain 2, turn, once again work an ordinary double crochet or a regular double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, not counting the first stitch where your 2 chains represent your first double crochet. Right, next we're going to work 5 front post double crochets. So a front post double crochet over each or around each of the next 5 stitches. So you can see this is the front of your work, and as it's the front, we're going to be doing front post, just as we've done on previous rows. Go ahead. Don't forget to pause and rewind the video if you need to. and then work your puff shell into the next 2 chain space. So 1 puff stitch, 2 puff stitches, 2 chains, and another 2 puff stitches, all in the same 2 chain space. Next, work a front post double crochet around each of the next 5 stitches. This is how it's looking. So go ahead and work another puff shell here and another 5 front post double crochets here, and I'll meet you here at the end of the row. So when you reach the last 3 stitches, do a regular double crochet in each of the last 2 stitches and in the second of those 2 turning chains. And there we've finished row 7. Now for row 8, 9 and 10, it's going to be very similar to this, except we're working this row here slightly differently. So for row 8, chain 2, turn your work, and now you're going to work a back post double crochet around the next stitch, and another back post double crochet around the next stitch, and now we're going to work our puff shell in the middle of these post double crochet stitches. So just count 1, 2, 3, find the middle one, which is just there, and do your puff shell as normal. So 1 puff stitch, 2 puff stitches, chain 2, and another 2 puff stitches. Next, you're going to work a double crochet into each of those stitches over the shell, the puff shell. So you skip 2 and then double crochet into each of those stitches and a double crochet into the 2 chain space. If I just show you here, you've done your little puff shell there, skip again, and then work over your shell like so. So once again, skip 2 and work your puff shell here, then work your regular double crochets over your puff shell as we've done before, and then work your puff shell in the middle here, and I'll meet you when you're almost at the end of the row. So when you've done your last puff shell, skip 2, work a back post double crochet around the next stitch, another back post double crochet around the next stitch, and then a regular double crochet in that second chain at the end. There we go. So that is the reverse of your work and the end of row 8. So next for row 9, just chain 2, turn your work, and this is how it's looking. You can see now it's offset here. So to begin row 9, we're going to work a front post double crochet around the second stitch and the third stitch, another front post double crochet. And we're going to skip over to the next 2 chain space and work a puff shell. So a puff stitch, another puff stitch, chain 2, and then another puff stitch, and one more puff stitch. Okay. Now we're ready to work front post double crochets around these next 5 stitches. Just get some yarn out and there we go. And you repeat this sequence to the end. So it's 5 front post double crochets over your groups of double crochets, and then your little puff shells in the 2 chain spaces of the puff shells from the row below. So I'll let you carry on with this sequence and I'll meet you at the end of row 9. So remember, complete your next puff shell, 5 front post double crochets, a puff shell, and then you'll need 2 front post double crochets at the end and a double crochet in the 2 chains. So here we are at the end of row 9, and just work a double crochet into the second of those 2 chains. And this is how it's looking. So for row 10, you'll actually be repeating row 4. So chain 2, turn your work and do a back post double crochet around each of the next 2 stitches. And then there's no need for me to demonstrate this as we're going to repeat row 4. So I'll just show you here. Work your puff shell into the 2 chain space, your 5 back post double crochets around this block here, another front post a puff shell here, back post double crochets across here, your shell here, and then I'll meet you at the very end just here. Okay, so to finish off the last row of the repeat, row 10, do your back post double crochets after your shell, just work a double crochet in the second of those 2 chains. Okay, so that is the row, the last row of our repeat. So just go ahead and carry on with your blanket however you wish it to be, or just fasten off and we'll start to work the border. I'll just show you the right side before we start with the border. Right, so we need our right side facing like so. Zoom out a little bit now, there we go. And as we've already got a single crochet border at the bottom, we're going to attach our yarn here at this bottom right corner and work approximately 2 stitches or 2 single crochets in the end of each row right to the top right corner. Okay, so let's get started with the border. To complete the single crochet border with the right side of your work facing, find that bottom right corner and we're going to work up the right side. So go ahead and attach your yarn in that bottom right corner however you normally do. This is how I do it. And then work approximately 2 single crochets at the end of each row. Try to go under a couple of stitches or loops of yarn so it doesn't go too gappy. Okay, so if you continue working your single crochets up the right side to the top right corner, I'll meet you there in a few moments. Once you've reached the top right corner, work a single crochet, a chain 1, and then a single crochet. I'm just crocheting over the tail end of the yarn where we finished off before, and now you simply work a single crochet in each stitch across the top of your blanket. Don't worry that it's a little bit wavy because of the puff shells, etc. That will all straighten out later. So you go in each stitch, but in this 2 chain space, just work 1 single crochet. Then in each stitch, a single crochet. So continue and I'll meet you at the top left corner. So at the top left corner, you'll pop a single crochet in that second of those 2 chains, chain 1 and single crochet in the same stitch. And then you just go ahead and work 2 single crochets all the way down the blanket to the next corner, to the bottom left corner. And once again, try to pop about 2 single crochets in the end of each row. That's just really a guide because it helps your work to lay flat. You'll find if you put too many stitches in, it will go a bit wavy. And if there are too few, it will pull. So continue, and I'll meet you in a few secs. So at the bottom left corner, which is where you'll find your starting slip knot, just pop 1 single crochet in there. You don't have to make a corner here because we're going to be crocheting these edges in a slightly different way. Right, so I'm going to fasten off and we're going to attach some little chains to each corner. So if I show you, this is how your work will be looking. As I said, don't worry about those little bumps here, that will all even out. So I've already attached some chains to another sample to show you what we're doing. So this is the idea. We're going to make some lengths of chains and attach them to each corner. Now, of course, your blanket will be a lot bigger, so these chains will look as if they're more in proportion. And all we're going to do then is single crochet across the length of chains, across the single crochets down the side of the blanket, and directly across the single crochet, the chains. Turn and then just keep working backwards and forwards until you have the width you'd like your ties to be and your border to be. And it's as simple as that. So I'll just go ahead and show you how I attach these little chains to the corners. So go ahead with your slip knot as usual and crochet a total of 25 chains. Continue doing that and I'll meet you in a few seconds. So when you've got your 25 chains, just remove your hook from the loop, and then as long as your work's the right side facing, you can find any corner, put your loop, well, pop your hook in the corner loop, the corner stitch I should say, which is here. Slip your hook or the loop back on the hook and just pull that loop through. Next, go ahead and chain another 25. So what that does, it just joins, saves you sewing in, and you can crochet all in one. Okay, so go ahead and crochet another 25 chains and fasten off. And to fasten off, you just snip your yarn and just pull through and give it a little tug. And there you've completed one of your corner ties. Well, the foundation for your tie. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go back to the one I've already done and I'll show you how to work across from one tie to the next. So as you can see, you've got the little back bumps on your chains. Try and get them so they're facing the right way, and just start at the end of your chain and attach your yarn, and we're going to start with just a row of single crochets. Once again, you can do this however you wish. So in that first chain, I'm just going to pull that through, chain one, and go back in with a single crochet. And then I'm actually not going to crochet over the tail ends. I'm going to weave those in. You get a better finish. Right, so under the top loop of each chain, work a single crochet. Just as if you were doing the first row of your blanket. So continue with this and I'll meet you when you get to the edge of your blanket just here. So I'm just approaching the corner. Again, going under the top loop. Now, when you reach the blanket, you'll see here, there is a little stitch there. Just go in there with a single crochet and then single crochet all the way across the top, bottom or side of your blanket, wherever you are. And that's how it's looking. I think I missed one there, but we're not going to worry about that too much. Right, so what will happen here is you'll just fold that across, and then when you start on this side, you'll approach and just have it facing the right way and work it. Well, it'll actually be from the other side because you need to be right side facing. So that will be the end. Okay, so continue across and I'll meet you in a second at the next corner. So here we are at the next corner. You can see there's a tie at the back there. So I'm just going to go in here and then under the top loop of the chain and work my way across, making sure those chains are facing the right way round, meaning the little V of the chain is facing you, not the back bumps, and you're going under the top loop. There you go. Right, so continue to the end of your length of chains and I'll meet you in a second. So almost at the end of the length of chains, work under that final top loop of that last chain and then just turn your work. You don't need to chain one, and in that very first stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop and go ahead and work a single crochet and then single crochet back down over those single crochets. So one single crochet in each stitch, right down the ties, across your blanket and down the other side of the tie. There we are, that's how it's looking. So go ahead and do that and I shall meet you in a second. So as you can see here now, the wrong side of the work is facing us, and this is the little tie that will be for this side. So that just is tucked out of the way there. So just continue working single crochets all the way down across your blanket or your swatch or sample and then over the tie, and I'll meet you at the end of the next of the other tie. So at the end you just turn your work again, go straight in and work another row of single crochets, and you repeat this all the way across, down this tie, across the blanket and across the tie, and you just keep doing this until you have a total of, you'll have 5 rows of single crochets. So this little row here and there, but you can do as many rows as you like. So I'll just get the blanket itself, and this is the top left corner of the blanket. So if I undo the little tie here, you'll be able to see this is exactly what I did. Work backwards and forwards over the ties, down the blanket, and we ended up with one, let's see if I can count these, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And as you can see here, that just sits under there. So as you come to crochet another tie, you'll just fold that down and work over your ties. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial. I really hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. But in the meantime, do leave comments, and if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, it would really help my channel if you did. And if you turn your bell notifications on, you won't miss any future videos. So in the meantime, take care, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.